Good morning. Welcome to Team's Port News Hour. Now for the fifth day in the 12th month by the heavenly calendar, 16th year of Changi. Tim Elder sitting in for the second king of Chanukku, Hyungji Moon. And let us go take our sojourn around the kingdom to see what is going on right now in Chongqing, Tennessee. 33 degrees and mostly cloudy. Cloudy today, major winter storm this weekend will cause significant travel disruptions, 47 for a high today. So I guess better go out and do some shopping, but I guess everyone's going to be stocking up on toilet paper, right? I think I've expressed before about what I think about that. I mean, of all the things to stock up on, you know, I've never heard of anyone dying because of the lack of toilet paper. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Uh, Study what the Romans did. I won't say anything more about that. Study what the Romans did. Okay. No one died from the lack of toilet paper. All right, tonight getting down to 23 degrees, and it's going to be cloudy tonight. Oh my goodness, father's hometown, Cheongju, North Korea, still going through this spell of a bitter, bitter, bitter cold. Right now it's 8 degrees Fahrenheit, real feel of 2 degrees below zero. And the actual temperature is going to get down to 4 degrees below zero tonight. Of course, that's minus 20 on the Celsius scale. And tomorrow, cold with plenty of sunshine, high of 21. At least they have sunshine, I guess. And let's see, Cheongju Palace in northeast Pennsylvania, clear and 18 degrees right now. Mostly cloudy today, breezy and colder, high of 34. Tonight, mainly clear, brisk and colder, low of just 1 degree. And then at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas, 52 degrees and fog this morning and getting up to 57 today, windy and periods of rain. Tonight, windy and much colder with rain. And ending before temperatures fall below freezing. How far below freezing? Well, just a single degree. It's going to be a low of 30, a low of 31 tonight, just barely below freezing. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently cloudy and 31, and then tonight getting down to 27. Tomorrow partly sunny, breezy in the afternoon, high of 41, and it looks like it's going to start raining. Well, just about now, actually. I'm sorry, not rain, snow. But it's according to this, it should start snowing right about now. Okay. And then at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, 36 degrees and clear. Mainly clear tonight, low of 24. Tomorrow, partly sunny with a brief shower or two in the afternoon, high of 46. Guangdong Province, China, 50 degrees and overcast, partly cloudy, low of 50 tonight. And then tomorrow, clouds yielding to sun, high of 67. Okay, let's go to Father's Word down here. Okay, let's see here. Earthly Life in the Spirit World, Chapter 5. The Messiah and the Spirit World. Now, actually, as long as we're here, let me see if I can. What is it? Here we go. Okay. Let me skip ahead a couple of pages to this section on the family of the true parent and the spirit world, because I was actually quite shocked to when I first, it can't be when I first read it. I mean, I must have read it dozens of times, but it never really sort of hit me. But then one time it really did hit me. And uh, and now it's one of those things where, these things where you once you see it, you can't unsee it. Uh, this is one of those things where once you understand it, you can't understand it because it's really quite prominent once you understand it. And he's talking about Hunjin Nim here. Um, and he says some pretty shocking things about Hunjin Nim. Let's see if I can find the sentences. Beginning, of course, his father's second child with Hak Jahan, child just under Hyojinim, and Hungjinim died in a traffic accident in the early 1980s, right? 1982 or something like that, 82, 83, something like that. And uh, some people mark his death as kind of a turning point for Hak Jahan. Here we go, yeah. Right, here we go. Uh, let's see, this is chapter 5, section 5.1. And in the um, second paragraph of that 5.1, well, let's just go ahead and begin at the beginning here, 5.1. By Hungjin going to the spirit world, the able and the angel that were divided between heaven and earth are now bound as one, like twins. And it is on this foundation that the parent is able to go forward. This is the view of the unification principle. In the next paragraph, Hungjin is the able in the son's position. And this son went to the spirit world on the foundation of having established the condition for indemnity of the principal realm of principal dominion. Realm of principal dominion. So, realm of principal dominion is the direct dominion, right? He was victorious in the realm of satanic dominion, and he went to the spirit world in the position of having established the direct realm of direct dominion. Whoa, wait a second. Yeah, that actually would mean that you know, uh, that's actually a pretty amazing statement if you think about it. He's saying that Hung Jin went to the spirit world in the realm of direct dominion, right? It was beyond, in other words, beyond the fall. So, Father continues, for this first time following the fall, he was a son that had the qualification of having reached completion. What? What? Yes, that's what it says. Having the son of having reached completion, and he went to the heavenly world on that condition. All right. Blah. Okay. And I can't find it right now immediately, but uh, Father also in here in these sentences here that I cannot identify right now, but it's in here. Says that that the Hungjinim's arrival in spirit world was the equivalent of the second coming of Jesus in the spirit world. Wow. Anyway, check out if you're interested, check out the English language version. I have not looked at the English language version specifically on this, but go to Earthly Life in the Spirit World, Chapter 5, Section 5.1. The title of the section, just direct translating the Korean here, Champum Kajongwa Yongge, the family of the true parent and the spirit world. Okay. Wow. Okay. So it's great. It's great. It's great. It's fantastic that this was accomplished, and it gives us tremendous hope. Gives us tremendous hope because you know we always kind of think that none of us are going to actually completion, but actually Hung Jinim did. He did. Of course, he was born as a second generation, but I mean, if he did it, then that means that the other second generation certainly can, and also the first generation as well. Praise God. Praise God. Praise God. The reason that some people think that this was a turning point for Hak Jahan was that I don't think they've actually heard her say this, but they think that this was a little bit after Father turned 60, and on Father and Hak Jahan's 60th birthday, he sort of praised her as having done a good job. Okay, so they figure, well, everything must have been good up to that point. In other words, until Father's birthday in 1980. But then things started sort of, for her anyway, for her, from her perspective, things started going awry after that. And and Hung Jinim's death in this traffic accident was one of those things they think affected Hak Jahan. Although she says something different, right? Anyway, she says something completely different, but in her deposition. But they say that she started thinking, how can this kind of a thing be happening, right, in the Messiah's family? If this is happening, then that must be proof that he is not the Messiah. This kind of thing. She, of course, says in her deposition, and I was there, I heard her say this, that it was her plan all along from the moment of her marriage to Father, her blessing to Father in 1960. It was her plan all along to someday take over the Unification Church, and that it would be up to her um, to or it would be that she would be able to do what she wanted anyway once Father was gone. And then she said, and I heard this. Why else would I marry someone so much older than me? I was shocked. Wow. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And she actually said that. I heard it, and it was recorded. It's in the official record. Of course, the Family Federation has refused to allow the full recording of that deposition to be released. So if I'm wrong, if they want to say that I'm wrong, no problem. Go ahead and release the recording. Have no all that is needed for that recording to be released is for the Family Federation to say to the court, this would be the district court. What is it for the Central District of Pennsylvania? I believe it is, isn't it? That was handling this case. The Federal District Court for the Central District of Pennsylvania. All the Family Federation just has to tell them to release that recording of Hak Jahan in April of 2000, 19, yes, 2019. Her deposition in April 2019 in the case of a Family Federation versus the World Peace and Unification Sanctuary, where they were trying to get us to stop using the Tonga mark. So just release that recording, and you'll see whether I'm telling the truth or not. Alrighty then. Let's see here. What is going on? Okay. So today Davos ends, and of course President Trump is already back in the White House, but they're sort of cleaning up and mopping up and whatever it is they do on the last day, and but President Trump is back in the White House, and the Washington Examiner has their sort of wrap up of that event, and so let's take a look at this. And they say Davos shows that Europe still doesn't get it. And yeah, I think the headlines is something that I can certainly agree with. Europe still believes that they're the old world and they're the adult and they know what they're doing. And America is the new world. And the proof of the fact that America doesn't know what it's doing is the fact that they elect President Trump as our president. So that's proof positive that we don't know what we're doing. And so we need them to sort of tell us what to do. And I think that's kind of the attitude of people like van der Leyen, Christine Lagarde, uh, and who else? The guy, the Humpty Dumpty type guy that leads the Bank for International Settlements. Look up his picture and you'll know what I mean. I think if I keep eating the way I am, I'm going to look like him someday. Anyway, go ahead and take a look. Anyway, I hope I don't. I don't hope. I don't. I hope I don't ever. But I don't know. I don't know. I've been gaining a lot of weight. Anyway, so that guy, and I've forgotten his name, and who else? All sorts of people, right? Macron, Keir Starmer, who else? Merz, the German, the head of the Germany. Uh, there are some good people, I suppose, like Maloney from Italy, and by the way, spent this week, I think, avoiding Davos and actually being in Korea and Japan, I think. Anyway, here we go. Leaders of the business and political worlds gathered this week in Davos, Switzerland, for the annual World Economic Forum. Davos has long been lampooned for seeming to be a get-together of elites, each of whom seems more out of touch than the next. This time, it particularly revealed a gulf separating many European leaders from reality. President Donald Trump and Greenland were on the tip of everyone's tongue. His desire to secure Greenland, and in particular, his increasingly unhinged rhetoric about seizing the strategically vital island, prompted undesirable concern from many world leaders. Trump, however, announced at Davos that the U.S. military would not use force to secure Greenland and that a deal had been reached. And we'll get into that in just a minute. This perhaps is to be expected from a mercurial dealmaker, but Davos showed that some European heads of government also subsist on a steady diet of delusions. Many are concerned about America's increasing unpredictability, but far more seem upset that the U.S. administration is asking them to pay their fair share. Things are not what they once were. The security and economic architecture built in the aftermath of World War I is fraying. The Cold War ended 3 decades ago, yet much of Europe has continued to bank on the United States footing their defense bills, even as they often fail to meet the minimum NATO spending requirement. So after World War II, of course, Europe was destroyed. Uh, Pretty much all of Europe, except for, I guess, what Spain, I suppose, was not. It was certainly not destroyed. Who else was not destroyed? Spain, Portugal. Of course, they were not so well off in the first place. Switzerland, I guess. Yeah, Switzerland. Okay. They were not bombed. But that's pretty much it, right? Everything else was pretty much destroyed. Okay. And then so the U.S., the Marshall Plan and so forth, decided to help Europe. But unfortunately, as often happens when you help somebody, they come to take it for granted. And I think after World War II, after the Marshall Plan and so forth, Europe, instead of saying, "Wow, this is great, thank you very much," but you know what, our pride requires us to stand on our own feet as quickly as possible. Instead of saying that, they said, "Oh, look, our rich American uncles, our rich American cousins, they're going to help us forever and ever, ever and ever and ever." And so we're still trying to get out from under that from under that trap that we set for ourselves, in a sense. Maybe the Marshall Plan was a mistake. I don't know. Maybe we should have let Europe fend for itself. Of course, they would have been taken over by the Soviet Union, but okay. More than a decade after Russia first invaded Ukraine in 2014, remaking the map of Europe for the first time in decades, many still decline to shoulder their share of the defense burden. Worse, some have enabled Russia and its ally China through trade and energy deals. That's right. On the one hand, they say, oh, bad, 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 bad Russia. Let's sanction them and everything like that. But then they turn around and say, oh, yes, but we still need to import gas and oil from Russia. And President Trump told them, right, when they were setting up this pipeline from Russia, told them, you guys are fools. But they laughed at him. And now, well, now they are where they are. This is not, and for some time has not been, a sustainable arrangement. European resent the implication. Change is hard, but some take it harder than others. At Davos, Finnish President Alexander Stubb said Europe can unequivocally defend itself. Okay, well, great. Goodbye then. This isn't true, not even close, and recent events prove it. And especially Finland. Finland has a long border with Russia, and Finland, I suppose, thinks that it can defend itself because it has an experience of fighting a war with Russia and coming out ahead more or less. And but anyway, it's interesting that the Finnish president would say this. In a show of defiance to Trump, Denmark launched Operation Arctic Endurance, sending military contingents from 12 nations to Greenland. France sent 15 soldiers. Whoa, wow, 15 soldiers. who was selected? How did they select the 15 soldiers, right? They must have drawn straws and or something like that. Ditto Germany, although they didn't stay long. Norway sent 2, Sweden 3, okay. The Netherlands sent a single officer. Many of the troops arrived on chartered commercial flights. The deployment was called, quote, symbolic, unquote. Okay. In a way, it is. It shows a continent that hasn't taken its defense seriously for a very long time, preferring to rely on the U.S. instead. The Trump administration has tried to nudge, even drag its European partners to reality, but there's been some kicking and screaming. Not, thankfully, from NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte. At Davos, Rutte hailed Trump's efforts, saying the president forced Europe to stand up and pay more. He observed that with growing threats from China, it is only logical for them to expect us in Europe to step up over time. Rutte seemed to be the rare European leader at Davos who could see the forest, not just the trees. French President Emmanuel Macron and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney gave speeches that noted the rapidly changing global environment, but effectively called for more of the same. And Carney especially, blamed President Trump for the changes. He said, without naming Trump, basically, he gave a speech where he said where he sort of strongly implied that President Trump was tearing things down, and we don't know yet what is going to replace it. And by the way, President Trump, I'm reading, has canceled Canada's invitation to the Board of Peace. Good for him. I wish he'd also cancel the one to China, but well, okay. A WEF poll shortly before the meeting cited climate change, not totalitarian states or terrorist groups, as the greatest threat facing the world for the next 10 years. Many still hope for business as usual, but pretending not to see the obvious isn't a strategy. The world and its strategic security questions are changing, whether European leaders like it or not. The sooner they reconcile themselves to reality, the better for them and for the U.S. And that's the end of that. Yes. Okay, and let's go to, here we go. Let's go to the deal on Greenland. Okay. Now don't get your hopes up. Don't get your hopes up. Okay. Donald Trump reveals Greenland framework deal timeline. Okay, so she's telling us about the timeline. President Donald Trump on Thursday pointed to a familiar timeline when asked about progress on his administration's proposed Greenland framework, saying he would have an update on the details in about 2 weeks. Okay. All right, so go back to bed, pull up the covers, 2 more weeks. You can sleep for 2 more weeks. Language he has frequently used to signal impending decisions on major policies and deals. Trump made the remarks aboard Air Force One while returning from the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, responding to a reporter's question about whether Denmark had signed off on a framework aimed at easing tensions around the president's stated desire to acquire the Arctic territory. While offering no details on the substance of the proposal, Trump expressed confidence in the discussion, saying, "I think everyone likes it." Okay. Before adding that the White House expected clarity soon. I think everybody likes it, yeah. Well, you know, part of President Trump's negotiating strategy is that um, there's a process for making the sausage. There's a process. And it's usually best for you to just wait at your table uh, and wait for the sausage to be served to you, rather than going into the kitchen to watch exactly how the sausage is being made. And I think when he says, "I think everybody likes it," this is part of the sausage being made. And I think this is something that for one, am not going to take too seriously. Okay. I'm still waiting at my table, waiting for the waiter to bring the sausage and serve it on my plate. I'm sure I'll like it when I see it. I'm sure it will taste excellent. But in the meantime, let's not look too closely at how it's being made, in my opinion. Trump's new comments offer the clearest window yet into what he previously described as a framework for Greenland that stops short of a traditional purchase, but would significantly expand U.S. control and long-term involvement in the Arctic territory. The president told reporters the concept envisioned a permanent arrangement with no formal time limit, repeatedly emphasizing U.S. military access, infrastructure construction, and operational freedom to do whatever we want, while suggesting NATO would be involved. He also indicated there would be no purchase price, portraying the proposal instead as a security-driven partnership that he argued would benefit both the U.S. and Europe though Danish and Greenlandic leaders have publicly rejected any suggestion that sovereignty or ownership could be transferred. But President Trump's point is that, listen, if we don't take control of it, China or Russia will. And he's made this point. And he says, when that happens, then we will be forced to go to war with whichever it is. Whether if it's China that takes control, then we'll have to go to war with China. If Russia takes control, we'll have to go to war with Russia. But we don't want to do that. We'd rather go to war with Denmark. He didn't say that. He didn't say that. But obviously, if you have to choose between China and Denmark, it's probably better to go to war with Denmark. Anyway, okay, Greenlandic leaders again. It remains unclear how far discussions have progressed or whether Denmark has formally engaged with the proposal beyond publicly rejecting any transfer of sovereignty. Danish officials have not confirmed agreement on a broader framework, and Greenland's government has repeatedly stressed that any changes to the territory's defense posture would require its explicit consent. Trump did not specify who, if anyone, is negotiating on behalf of Copenhagen or Nuuk, that's the capital of Greenland, nor did he outline what legal mechanism would underpin the arrangement he described. Trump has a long record of invoking a vague 2 weeks timeline when pressed for decisions or details, a pattern that stretches back to his first term. Over the years, he has said updates on issues ranging from healthcare and infrastructure or foreign policy in Russia would come in about 2 weeks, often repeatedly and without clear follow-through. The phrasing has become familiar enough that reporters and commentators now routinely question whether such deadlines will hold, especially after multiple past instances in which similar promises slipped or reset. So, like I say, wait for the sausage to come and be served to you on your plate. Okay? Don't be impatient. Don't be impatient. But already, I think there's a deterrence value that China or Russia, probably both, are now being deterred from trying to take steps to exercise or to acquire control over Greenland. And you can bet that China, especially, I'm sure, has a plan to do that. And if they do, as I suspect, then that plan, I think, has been pushed back by President Trump's rhetoric, shall we say, or his rhetoric. because now President Trump shows that has told China basically that he's looking at Greenland, he's watching Greenland, and he's definitely, whatever happens, he's not going to allow China or Russia to take control of Greenland and or the rest of the Arctic. I mean, Russia already has what, about half, I think, of the Arctic, because of Siberia. China does not have any territory that directly borders the Arctic, but they still, for some time now, have demonstrated that they have an interest in the Arctic area. And I guess more than Russia, China would want very much to acquire Greenland, because that would, for the first time, give them um, territory that borders the Arctic. The United States, of course, has Alaska. Canada, Canada has its territories there on the Arctic, and maybe part of China's strategy is to um, get control of the Canadian territory by getting control of the Canadian political apparatus, which they've made considerable progress in doing. Carney, Trudeau, these people are very much in China's pocket, and they sort of exploit the resentment, I suppose, or the jealousy that some people, especially some leaders in Canada, express towards the United States. I think basically, rather than being an actual thing, I think some Canadian leaders take advantage or try to foment this jealousy towards the United States, and try to sort of establish their position as a result of that. So anyway, China trying to take control of the Arctic region. And I think President Trump, if he's accomplished nothing else so far, he has made it more difficult for China to do that. And now, spotlight is there on Greenland, but also on the rest of the Arctic territories, including northern Canada. All right, so yes, this is what we voted for. Absolutely, yes, this is exactly what we voted for. Okay. Now, okay, the other thing that is happening today, of course, this is a well-advertised event, but it actually did happen. So let's just make a note that it actually did happen. And that is that Prime Minister Takaichi in Japan dissolved the lower house of parliament, or it's called the Diet. You've heard, in history, you've heard of the Diet of Reims, right? Look it up in your history books, history. And so diet, it's not just something that you do by not eating meat. It's also a gathering of politicians like this. Anyway, so the Japanese Diet, the lower house of the Japanese Diet, was dissolved today. And usually when they do this, they all stand up and shout "Banzai!" But I don't see I don't see a photograph of that. Usually that's sort of that's part of the ceremony. I don't see them doing that. But anyway, so now February 8th is when the election will be held, and we will see. And this is AP, Associated Press, and of course, Associated Press has become very leftist. But anyway, that's much, 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 much more leftist than it used to be. That's really a tragedy. Anyway, Japanese Prime Minister Sana Takaichi dissolved the lower house of parliament on Friday, paving the way for an early election on February 8th. The move is an attempt to capitalize on her popularity to help the governing party regain ground after major losses in recent years, but it will delay parliamentary approval for a budget that aims at boosting a struggling economy and addressing soaring prices. Takaichi, elected in October as Japan's first female leader, has been in office only 3 months, but she has seen strong approval ratings of about 70%. Yes, yes. Takaichi's Liberal Democratic Party could still face some challenges as it reels from a series of scandals about corruption and the party's past ties to the Unification Church, or actually Family Federation. Okay, but Okay, someday we're going to teach the media to make a distinction, but this is probably not the time. But it is not clear if the new opposition centrist reform alliance can attract moderate voters while opposition parties are still too splintered to pose a serious threat to the LDP. Takaichi is also seeing rising animosity with China since making remarks on Taiwan, and US President Donald Trump wants her to spend more on weapons as Washington and Beijing pursue military superiority in the region. And I think she wants to, she does. But in order to do that, she needs a strong position in the parliament. Although right now her coalition partner is also right wing, but but I think LDP alone needs to have a majority in. And well, anyway, let's finish this. The dissolution of the 465-member lower House of Representatives paves the way for a 12-day campaign that officially starts Tuesday when Speaker Fukushiro Nukaga declared the dissolution. Lawmakers stood up and shouted, "Banzai!" That's what I told you. Long live, 3 times, and rushed out to prepare for the campaign. Every time the parliament gets dissolved, they stand up and say, "Banzai! Banzai! Banzai!" it's it's great to be a politician, isn't it? Okay. Takaichi's plan for an early election aims to capitalize on her popularity to win a governing majority in the lower house, the more powerful of Japan's two-chamber parliament called the National Diet. The scandal-tainted LDP and its coalition had a slim majority in the lower house after the election loss in 2024. The coalition lacks a majority in the upper house of councillors and relies on winning votes from opposition members to pass its agenda. But the way that works in Japan, the upper house, but it's nothing like the U.S. Senate. The upper house is sort of more of an advisory body, right? And the U.S. Senate, they also is also described as an advisory body, but you don't have a situation like you do in the U.S. where both houses have to agree on the exact language, and if they don't agree on the exact language, then a bill cannot get passed. In Japan, if the upper house rejects, especially the budget, right, then it goes back to the lower house, and the lower house says, well, we still think it's a good idea. Then it gets passed, and there's no president who has to sign off on it either. So in the end, if there's a conflict between the two, then the lower house wins. Let's see here. Opposition leaders criticized Takaichi for delaying passage of a budget needed to fund key economic measures. Well, I mean, this is politics. Of course, they're going to criticize her. I believe that the only option is for the people as sovereign citizens to decide whether Sanae Takaichi should be prime minister, she told the news conference Monday when announcing plans for the election. I'm staking my career as prime minister on it. In other words, if she does not win a majority, then no one is saying this. I'm the one who's saying this, but I think if she does not win a majority, then there will be. I think she can. I'm sure is expecting. We'll see what happens, but as AP also said, she has her personal popularity at about 70%. But will that translate into a majority of the seats? That's the problem. That's the problem, right? And that's, as one Japanese prime minister or major politician once said, you can never predict the results of an election until you open the lid. Until you open the lid. In other words, until you count the votes. Takaichi, a hardline conservative, wants to highlight differences with her centrist predecessor, Shigeru Ishiba. Takaichi stresses that, who is also LDP, by the way. So the LDP is kind of an alliance of various groups, various sort of factions. And Takaichi belongs to what used to be the Abe faction. I guess it's the Takaichi faction now. And Ishiba was also within the LDP, but much more liberal. Takaichi stresses that voters need to judge her fiscal spending moves, further military buildup, and tougher immigration policies to make Japan strong and prosperous. While an upbeat and decisive image has earned her strong approval ratings and fans of her personal style, the LDP isn't popular as it recovers from a political funds scandal. Many traditional LDP voters have shifted to emerging far-right populist opposition parties, such as the anti-globalist Sanseitou. Sanseitou, by the way, means party of political participation. Interesting name. Meanwhile, Japan faces tensions with China after Takaichi made remarks suggesting that Japan could become involved if China takes military action against Taiwan, a self-governing island. A furious China has increased economic and diplomatic retribution. Takaichi wants to push further a military buildup and spending increases, while Trump has pressured Japan to spend more on defense. So yeah, she wants to push further this military buildup, spending increases. Takaichi says she needs a mandate to push policies she's agreed on with her new coalition partner, the right-wing Japan Innovation Party, or JIP. They struck a deal in October to pursue goals that include a stronger military, continuing male-only imperial succession, and accelerating the reactivation of offline nuclear reactors. Right? The male-only imperial succession is an interesting situation because the imperial family in Japan is having trouble having babies, especially male babies. I think they have one right now who's sort of in line to become emperor. But the Japan claims that its imperial line is unbroken for I think 124 or something like that emperors. So it's not like the British, for example, who I guess there have been a number of families, right, or dynasties in the UK. But Japan claims, and some historians, of course, will go back and doubt this, but there is a kind of a demographic crisis, shall we say, in the imperial family right now. Takaichi struck a deal with struck a deal with JIP after LDP's longtime ally Komeito, a Buddhist-backed centrist party, and I think in the U.S. you may be familiar with the Value Creation Society or Soka Gakkai. They're the ones that it was basically it was the Komeito was created by the Soka Gakkai, although they later sort of became independent, sort of evolved away from the Soka Gakkai, but still, it's AP says it's Buddhist-backed. Centrist, they say, well, AP, if they were more honest, they would say pro-China or China-friendly party. And so it's good, actually, that LDP and Komeito broke up, left the governing bloc over her ideological views and reluctance to pursue anti-corruption measures. But, there was China, and AP is not mentioning this fact, that Komeito just wouldn't go along with someone who was not going to bow down to China, because Komeito does bow down to China, but AP is not mentioning that here. With the new partner's help, she secured just enough votes to become prime minister. Komeito turned on the main liberal-leaning opposition, the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan, to form the Centrist Reform Alliance just in time for the election. Now is our chance to start the centrist movement, said Yoshihiko Noda, a former prime minister and leader of the Constitutional Democrats. The name sounds nice, right? Constitutional Democrats. I mean, who can be against the Constitution, right? And who can be against Democrats? So you have the liberal Democrats and you have the Constitutional Democrats. The liberal Democrats are not so liberal, and the Constitutional Democrats are not so constitutional. Okay. He said the new alliance seeks to achieve a diverse, gender equal, and inclusive society with people first politics, speaking at a joint news conference with co-leader Tetsuo Saito, head of Komeito. Inclusive society. And of course, this means something similar to what it means in America, inclusive of, transgender rights and stuff like that. But although, the whole issue of pronouns really is foreign to, I think, Asian languages, East Asian languages anyway. Uh, I challenge anyone to tell me how to translate they them into either Japanese or Korean. It doesn't translate at all. So, but anyway, inclusive. Speaking at a joint news conference with co-leader Tetsuo Saito, head of Komito. Whereas Takaichi, you see, is very so in line with Father's teaching that she believes in um, uh, heterosexual two-parent families. And of course, I've mentioned before that many, shall I say most, shall I say all, our blessed central families in Japan are very much support Takaichi very much. They have in the past, and I'm sure they will this time as well. I'm sure that they will all be going up there. You know, when Abe used to run for prime minister, um, our people would use their connections to find out exactly where Abe was going to be, and then they would sort of be there before him and support him, be in the front line there of his rallies and support him. And I suspect that they're going to do the same with Takaichi, but we'll have to see. Let's see here. As divisions and confrontations spread globally and economic disparity widens at home, the new group is promising a realistic security policy in efforts to achieve a nuclear weapons-free world. And this thing about nuclear weapons-free world is something that Japan sort of painting itself as the victim of two nuclear bombs uh, in World War II. Sort of, you know, this is kind of their standard. Right? This is their flag. We're the only country in the world that has been bombed by nuclear weapons. Yeah, what did you do to, what did you do prior to that led to that? Well, okay, we're not going to answer that. But Hiroshima, 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 Hiroshima. They'll all be shouting Nagasaki, Nagasaki, and it's kind of they sort of paint themselves as victims and say, oh, we have the right to call for a nuclear weapons-free world. Well, this is, of course, a a slogan that the Soviet Union used to like, and today, of course, China does, and also North Korea likes this kind of slogan because they're the only ones that will keep their nuclear weapons. But already Takaichi is proposing that Japan get rid of its previous nuclear policy, where they would say that they will not own, they will not introduce nuclear weapons, or they will not allow nuclear weapons to be introduced into Japan. They will not own them themselves, and one other thing. But anyway, so the three non-nuclear principles, and Takaichi is talking about getting rid of that. Opposition groups in Japan are seen as too splintered to win an election, and so far, polling for the alliance isn't promising. But Komito's ability to turn out votes from the Soka sect makes it a force to be reckoned with. And what Soka does is that when there's going to be an election, people, they move. They move to a new address strategically. They move strategically. And they may be doing that this time as well. Takaichi's promises. Let's get rid of this. Okay. Takaichi is focusing on the economy, looking to attract voters with measures to address rising prices and stagnant wages, as well as support for low-income households. And she wants to do this by spending a whole lot. And the crash in the bond markets that we saw, and also the stock markets that we saw around the world last, Wednesday? It's probably related. Some people say it's related to what she's planning to do. And she also wants to eliminate sales tax on food items. And taken by itself, taken out of context, of course, that's a great thing. I mean, Pennsylvania has no sales tax on food items that you buy in the grocery store. But that means that the Japanese deficit is going to just grow by that much more. And Japan already has a debt to GDP ratio of well over 200%. So yeah, we'll see what happens. And And so that's why the bond market said, whoa, we don't want to be a part of this. We're going to sell our Japanese bonds. We think anyway. But the security hawk has also pledged to revise security and defense policies to further strengthen the military and to eliminate arms export restrictions to allow more sales and develop the Japanese defense industry. Her party is also vowing tougher immigration rules and restrictions on foreigners living in Japan to address growing anti-foreign sentiment. I read someplace that now 10%, and I have to fact check this myself, maybe one of you can too, but 10% of the people living in Japan are now non-Japanese citizens, or at least they're foreign born, shall we say, foreign born. That would be an amazing statistic if it is true. Let's see. What is the foreign born population ratio in Japan? Let's see what they come up with there. About 3.2% it says here. Okay. Well, that's at the end of 2024. Oh, wait. Here we go. Yeah. Oh, I see. It rose by 10% in 2024. Okay, I misread that. Okay. Japan's foreign population rose by 2024 by 10% in 2024. Yes. Oh, that's more understandable. Okay. Setting a new record for the third consecutive year, Japan's foreign population was 3,768,977 as of the end of 2024. Okay. And then that's 2024. And then we have 2025 here. Let's look at the end of 2025. So anyway, the foreign-born or the foreign population in Japan is growing a lot. And it's not a surprise. Yes, I think you can see this, right? This graph, trends of the number of foreign residents here. And here it is 395,000, which means about 3,956,619. So, and especially recently, there's been a sharp uptrend, as you can see. So on October 10, 2025, the Immigration Service Agency released its announcement titled Number of Foreign Residents as of the end of June 2025. Okay, so that's more recent. And then here's the breakdown. China is 22.8, Vietnam 16.7, Korea 10.4, Philippines, Nepal, Indonesia, Brazil, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, and the United States, just 1.7%. Okay, 68,022 Americans. And then others, 13.9%. Right. Recently, when I was in Japan, I stayed at a hotel. I guess it was in Osaka. Was it in Osaka? Yes. No. Oh, yes. It was. Well, it was near Osaka. And the maids, who were what do you call it? The housekeeping services, I guess is the politically correct term. I noticed were visibly non-Japanese. And yet they were speaking Japanese to each other, which I thought was interesting. And maybe that's a rule. Maybe that's the rule of the hotel, that they don't want to sort of well, they're afraid that maybe I'm speculating here. Maybe they think that if their housekeeping people are speaking to each other in a language other than Japanese, then guests may be upset. It's possible that given Japan's character, it's possible. Okay, so these people were speaking to each other in Japanese, and but that was the first time that I'd seen the hotel housekeeping staff. There we go. I'm learning. I'll get to be politically perfect, politically acceptable one of these days. And also, previously, I think it was a year ago or so, I was in Japan. I went to a 7-Eleven, and I was in a hurry. I had to buy something quick, get back. I just stepped out of some sort of an event because I had to buy something. And I was in a hurry, so I was actually pulling out my money and my wallet without even looking at the person in front of me who was Alabama I was about to give the money to. And so I'm talking to that person without looking at them. I'm talking to them in Japanese, and then I look up, and she's not Japanese. And she was kind of, I guess, kind of surprised, but she played along. And I don't know what nationality she was. She may have been Filipino, but I don't know. So there you go. So a lot more foreigners, especially Chinese, and what was the breakdown? Chinese and Vietnam is the second largest. And Vietnamese, by the way, also a very large part now of the foreign population in Korea. Interestingly, I guess, I don't know. I guess they don't want to live in communism, I guess. That's the only way I can explain it. I guess the Chinese as well, you know. Interesting that the two largest populations in both Korea and Japan are communist countries. Interesting, very interesting. Okay. All right. I guess, for some reason, communism is not a nice place to live. Anyway, let's see, where are we now? But oh, I'm not sharing this. Okay, let me share this with you. So anyway, and Japan, of course, is losing population because people women don't want to get married. They don't want to even if they're married, they don't want to have babies. And well, well, the obvious result of that is that sentiment. Earlier this week, the LDP proposed new immigration policies, including tougher requirements for foreign property owners and a cap on the number of foreign residents in Japan. A cap. Okay, I had not heard that. Okay, that would be something. Okay, is that the end? Did we get to the end of the? I think we did. Yes. Okay. All right. So that's it. All right. So that is it on that story. Okay, and we're already just a couple minutes away from the end time. All right. Let's see here. What else do we have today? Guess that's pretty much all. Let me check. Make sure that nothing major has come up while we were talking. Right, okay. Canada's invitation has been revoked. Yes, of course. That's the lead in Fox News. And Jack Smith testimony. All right, I guess that's about it. Okay. Don't see anything major coming up right now. Oh, what is this? Somebody's going to boycott the World Cup because of Trump's Greenland deal. That seems a bit. Oh, look, French. France says it has no desire to boycott World Cup. Oh, so they're not going to boycott it. France says it has no desire to boycott World Cup amid U.S. Greenland deal framework. A far-left French politician has called for sanctions against the U.S. over its Greenland deal pursuit. Okay, so they're not going to boycott it. But I thought major EU nation reveals decision to boycott. This is a clickbait headline. Yeah. Okay. All right. Teachers union employee blows whistle on a cult. And this time they're not talking about us. Where conservatives are the enemy. Yes. Yes, the leftist cult, the NEA, the National Education Association or Educators Association. A whistleblower told Fox News Digital that NEA employees were crying in their offices the day after President Trump's 2024 election win. Okay, yes. So so this time they're not talking about us when they say cult. Good, good, good. All right, I think that's about it today. All right, thank you very much for joining us this morning. And let's see, tomorrow's Saturday, so I'll be back, and we'll see what happens in the meantime. So God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come quickly.